Welcome to the Never Dull Moment. I'm Greg, and today we have a tip for you. It could be that your entire life you've been looking in the knife blocks or the drawers and you see this random piece of steel and you've always wondered what it was. Well, it wasn't there for show and it wasn't there for you to make believe sword fight. It was actually there for a purpose. This is called a honing rod. Now, if you take a look at the honing rod, it is an ominous kind of a thing. It seems like, could you possibly use this? Well, today we're going to unlock that mystery for you. So the honing rod is something that sometimes is sold with a knife block. Sometimes you buy it separately. And the honing rod's purpose is to take a knife that has been used a lot, and the knife's life is actually been hit into a cutting board, slicing and chopping. And when you think about a knife, you actually have like the knife itself, its edge, it goes from being super flat and straight to kind of all wrinkly and fun because it's been hitting into a board. And our goal is to realign that edge. When you think about this, the knife edge, it's actually only half the size of a human hair. So even though we see the thickness of the back of the knife, we forget that the edge itself is so minute. And so over time, as we do that, the knife's edge will bend under and get out of line. And the knife can actually seem dull. So the first line of defense, the first step when the knife is dull is we want to get one of these tools out. So this is the honing rod. Now the honing rod, as you can see, it comes in several different types of material. Traditionally, it was always a steel. And when you saw it, the steel might be smooth, or like this one, it might have grooves in it. It can come in shorter sizes, like 8 inches, maybe as long as 12 or even longer. But typically, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this honing rod and you're going to realign the edge. Now, whether you get it in metal or ceramic, the first thing I need you to know is that these honing rods are actually harder than the edge of the knife. They're actually harder than the knife itself. And so we've always seen on television, we have seen that people will like rapidly move the knife back and forth. It's like a pretty big show. We never actually knew if the show amounted to anything. And actually it did. So let's go ahead and take a look at the two materials. We have steel and we have ceramic. Now, just because it's ceramic, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily less sharp. It doesn't mean that it's less hard than the other. Both of them are equally hard. When you look at the ceramic and you think it's really smooth, a lot of times there's actually a grit on there at a minute level. And usually that is somewhere equivalent around 3,000 grit if you look at a sharpening stone. Okay, so when you look at the two honing rods, the first thing you're going to say is, well, they're different materials, but they're also different lengths. And I'm going to show you now that as you're using the honing rod, it's actually usually a little bit better to have a longer one. It just makes it a little bit easier to do our work, but it's not wrong to have the shorter one. Now let's go ahead and talk about like how you use them, and then we'll talk about how many different ways we can get some use out of this. So the first off, we've always seen on television the show. I would say that's kind of careless. And if you're not doing it right, you can hurt yourself. If you choose to do it that way, there is some finger guards that you can use in some form or another. If you are going to use it, I would recommend not doing it this way. If you did do it this way, you've seen people use the edge towards yourself, which can lead to a slip. It is also not wrong to do the edge away from you. And so you'd have to come underneath. You can see I've definitely never done it really that way. So that is not wrong. But the way that we want to recommend to you today is you can either put it down directly on your cutting board. This way, when you're doing the knife edge, you're going away from yourself. Chances are you're not going to cut your hand. But to just ensure that you don't get a slip, which would be easy to do, I've got a damp cloth here, folded, and that's going to definitely help me keep it from slipping. And this is the way I would recommend that you teach your family if they're going to be doing this. So the goal here is to take your knife and it is to apply it pretty close. That normal advice would be to actually put it on at the sharpening edge. Chances are you don't know that. So I would just keep it pretty close, do a downward motion. And again, look at how nice it is with the longer rod. I can do the entire length of this blade on the longer rod. And so we want to do this. I mean, there's some pressure. I'm not going crazy. Again, the edge is half the diameter or half the thickness of a human hair. But after doing several passes, we've really aligned the edge. Now, this particular knife is a German knife. If you're going to do this, I recommend this definitely with the German knives, the European knives, the Sabatier, the Swiss knives, the French. It's just a little softer metal. It doesn't hold quite the edge. It loses its edge rapidly. But if you go into the clinging of the metal, chances are you're going to do less damage. When you get into a Japanese knife, these are very hard and very rigid. I would not recommend in any way that you like slam it against this rod. I would place it and do what's necessary. Now, this particular knife being as hard as it is it right for the steel or the ceramic? I personally prefer that you do this on stone or leather, but since we've got this with us, you can use it's always been a conversation, like, can you use a honing rod on a Japanese knife? The answer technically is yes. It just has to be done properly. I would take the ceramic rod very smooth. I do not want the steel to scratch up the edges of my expensive knives. So again, you're doing the edge very close. You're going to realign the edge of the knife. These knives are very brittle. So after so many passes, if you have not seen me do this, please, I'm going to put a link in the description. I have an amazing video called The Life of a Knife. And I show this particular knife used for 2.5 months without ever being honed, and how just an application against this rod improved it by like an amazing amount. I mean, I don't know how to explain it to you, like how sharp the knife got from just using this tool. These tools are not very expensive. I'll definitely have a link in the description. I think this was $30 or less. It travels well. Whether you're a professional chef, a caterer, or someone who really loves to cook and you're taking your expensive tools to grandma's house, your in-laws, and you want to cook Christmas dinner, this is something you can definitely put in your knife roll if you're a professional. And so like I said, it just travels well. It easily fits in your drawer in the kitchen, and it's able to realign everything. So let's do some of those passes. You know, it's so much louder if you use it on the steel, so I'm glad that we're protecting your knife from that. And I don't know. I mean, cutting a tomato is always a difficult thing. It is beautiful to be, whoa. That was pretty amazing. So I don't know how many of you guys have a knife that'll just do that, but this knife, it gets used all the time. It's really just honed regularly. So, paper tomato, anyone? So the honing rod, an amazing tool. It's something that does go hand in hand with owning a kitchen knife. I appreciate you looking in for more tips, and we're gonna be here every Tuesday and Friday night. That's our goal. So check back with us. We love being with you. Hopefully this was not a dull moment. I'm Greg, and thanks for watching.